Who can tell me what state is? The concept of state. And it doesn't even have to necessarily be about React, just in general. What do we mean when we're talking about state?
The state of something?
Yeah.
Oh no, you're using the word to define itself.
The status of something.
Status. Okay, all right.
Situation.
In context, the props that we pass in and arguments are read-only.
Oh, see, now you're relating to React. Okay, but I heard something over here. You said the situation.
Yeah,
that
like
was
for
kind of
instance.
interesting. I sort of like that. Yeah. So if you think about it, we could have a state of a whole lot of different things. We could have a state of a bank account, right? So a bank account at any given point in time has a certain balance in it. It might also have something like an interest rate because, as we know, those things can change over time as well. You guys as well can have your own states. So maybe when you wake up in the morning, you're either feeling, awesome, or maybe you wake up and you're feeling like, oh, not so great. That's a state, right? It's not a permanent condition. It's something that lasts for a time, and then you kind of move on to your next state. So ultimately, that's what we're talking about with our applications is going to be some data that's changeable. It's not fixed. It's not permanent. It can be changed over time. Okay? And thus far, when we've been looking, when we introduced React yesterday, we saw sort of a hard-coded situation. I think that's how you put it, Erica, which is that we were just passing in a list of things, and that list didn't change at all, right? It stayed exactly the same. So there was really no state in the application. There was no opportunity to change anything. All right. Today we're going to introduce this concept to see how can we change some things over time in our application so that they're not so boring and uninteresting, right? All right. So let's start a new project. I'm going to hop in my terminal here. And how do we start one of these Create React apps?
Or
npx, right? Create React app. Okay, and I'm going to name this, let's see, I'm going to call it Box Clicker. It's decided. All right, and then after that, I'm going to open it up in VS Code. So code box clicker. And I'll just kind of give you an intro on what we're trying to accomplish here while we're waiting for this thing to get set up. Basically, I'm going to set up a row of boxes on our page. Okay, we'll have 3 boxes, I think. We'll keep it kind of simple. And then they'll all start off in the same color. Okay? But as I click a box, it's going to change colors. And then after I've clicked all 3 boxes, the idea I was thinking of is maybe we could have some points as well. So that would be another sort of piece of state that we're trying to track. So once I've clicked all 3 boxes, let's add to the score and let's turn them all back to their original color. Okay? Any questions about that?
Not bad, but did you add code to like the environment path variable to make it like double?
No, what I did with that double ampersand sign is I said after I scaffold this new app, I want to open it up in VS Code. So it's sort of like one command happens, and then when that's finished, it will then do the other one. You may have to set that up, actually. Yeah, so if you go into this, if you do Command-Shift or Control-Shift-P, it'll open up this menu here, and you could type in add VS Code to your path, I believe is what it is. Yeah. Okay. So now we got this app set up here, and let's get it started so that we can use it, right? Does anyone remember how to start it? Or you can just say npm start. So that script name is very special, and you can just say npm start. Normally when you're running a script, though, you'd have to say npm run and then the name of that script. Okay. All right, cool. So we've got this stuff we know inside of our source here, inside of our app.js. Let's just kind of empty it out for now, because we're not going to use any of that stuff. And let's go about creating a component, right? So if I go back here, you'll see that my page is completely blank. comment out this logo because we don't need that. Let's create a component. So I'm going to create a components folder. So we'll go in here, components, and then I'm going to create my component, and we'll call this is going to be our box clicker component. So this will be the main thing, .js. All right. What do I need to import here for a React component? Okay. And optionally, I can, if I'm going to create a class component, which is what we're going to do today, I can also import specifically this class called component. Yeah, if I'm creating a functional component, there's no reason for me to import that class. Yeah. All right. From React. Cool. And now I'm going to create my class that, of course, inherits from that component class, right? So we'll say class box clicker extends component. Okay? And now what's the other thing I need to make sure to do from this file? I want to export it, right? So that other code can have access to it. So I can say export default box clicker. Okay? Now since I'm making a class component, what method do we probably want to have inside here? A constructor method, right? When does that run? It runs when the object is created, right? That's how this whole OOP thing works. So what are we going to take in here? Props. Again, it's that special object that we've been seeing. Okay. Now inside here, this is where I'm probably going to want to set up my state. Okay. This is like the way that the app is right now. Okay. Or the way that this component is going to be when we first create it. All right. So I'll say the first thing I need to do is actually run super. Okay. Remember how we kind of ran into that issue the other day? So we're going to run super, and then we're simply going to pass in those props that we got in the constructor. That will give us access to them elsewhere in our code, so I'll be able to say this.props.whatever if I need to. So run super against props. Okay. And then after that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my state. So I'm going to say this.state equals an object. Okay. And inside that object, I want to have a property that's indicating what is the state of my boxes currently. So I'll say boxes, and then I'll set that equal to an array. So my array is going to have 3 different values in it, because I said we would have 3 boxes on the screen, right? And I'm going to set all the values to 0. What do you guys think that indicates? If you had to guess. Yeah, it's just indicating we're kind of making this an on-off type situation. So we're saying 0 is because this hasn't been clicked yet, right? Okay, cool. All right. What other method do we need to have inside these class components? Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that, but what do we need to have in order to actually present something on the screen? We need to have this render method, right? Good. All right, so let's create that. And then what my render method is going to do is let's return some what? What are we? Some divs. Return div. We're returning JSX, right? Exactly. So we'll have a div here. Oh, and then it'll turn into a data view. Sweet. That's pretty cool. So we've got this div. And now, and I'll just put something in here so that we can test that it's working. So hello from box clicker. Right? Now, how do we use this? We go back to our app.js, right? And what do I need to do up here? Import. Yeah, at the bottom we made sure to do that. It's pretty easy to forget. So import box clicker, from / current directory, right? And then I'm going to go into my components folder, box clicker. Okay. Notice how we don't have to specify the .js on the end of that. Okay. And then to render that out, all I need to do is do it kind of like an HTML element, box clicker, and /. Okay, there are two ways that you could do it. You could do it like this, or you could also do it like this. That would work as well. Okay, that's up to you what you like better.
Are there any situations where one is edited?
Well, there are situations where you're going to need to do this, which is if box clicker were to take children, which is that sort of special thing we talked about. If there's going to be something inside the box clicker, you would have to do it like this. If there's nothing inside, then you could do it the other way. So in our case, we're not going to put anything inside our box clicker. Okay, so let's just make sure this is on screen. Hello from box clicker. We're good to go, right? Okay. So now inside the box clicker, what I want to do is instead of just rendering that, I want to iterate through this array that I've created right here that's inside my state, and I want to render out a box for each one of those, right? Okay, so what do we think we're going to use for that, for rendering out boxes? Map, right? So for each, remember, just runs a function against each value. In this case, I want to transform each value in a particular way. So I want to take those zeros and I want to turn them into a box that hasn't yet been clicked on. All right. So we'll say curly braces because this is going to be a JavaScript expression, right? And I'll say this dot state dot boxes dot map. Okay. So why are we saying this dot state inside here? Because state is now connected to this object, right? Okay, and then inside the state object that we created up here, we have this boxes property that's just an array. Okay, so we're kind of digging into this object a little bit. This is the object itself. We're checking out its state, and then we're going into the boxes property, and then we're mapping over all of these values one at a time. Okay. So what am I going to get from my inside here? I need to pass what? It's a callback function, right? It doesn't have to be an arrow function, but I'll make it one. And then in here, the first thing we're going to get is the value. So I'll just call this value. So we're expecting there to either get a 0 or a 1, right? It's clicked on or not. Okay, and then the other thing that we're going to get is the index as well. So maybe we want to know the index. Anybody know why knowing the index might be useful here? Yes. Although, don't we already know that because we've got these in here? Yeah. But the index would allow me to create that unique key that React wants so badly, right? All right. So let's just use it for that. So we'll say, I'll create a div inside here, and then we'll say the key equals I. So that way we know that it's going to have its unique key. And in fact, since there's not really, well, let's see. We'll put something inside the div too. Okay. So I want to put something inside here. Do we want to put any words, or do we just want to make them like colors and keep it like super simple? You guys have a preference? Oh, you want to put like the numbers of them? That would, yeah, that would work too. We could do that. So let's just put a number inside here. We'll say, I'm going to use these curly braces, and we'll say box space, and then here I'll just say I plus 1, right? So that would be the actual number. All right. So let's save that. Let's look back at what we have. Cool. We've got box 1, box 2, box 3. All right. The styling's not so hot though, so I might bring this back real quick so we can center everything. All right. That's fine. Cool. Now, what I want to do with the boxes is I want to kind of put them in a row, and I want to give them some height and some width, right? So this is where we can bring in some styling. Some CSS. Yes, indeed. So in this case, there are different ways to do styling, and hopefully you guys read that lesson. But the way that I'm going to show you guys is this thing called CSS Modules. Can anyone tell me what that is? What this concept is of a CSS module? Right, it's something where we've got some isolated styles that only apply to that component. But what's nice about that, because you guys have probably run into situations where a style that you used for one thing bled over and affected something else, right? And it's like, God, I can't seem to fix this thing and make sure that it's looking right. Well, in this case, because we're going to isolate things, we won't have that problem. Okay? So what I'll do is I'll create another file inside here. It's going to be called boxclicker.module.css. Okay? And inside this, I can do generally any regular thing that I can do in CSS. The only thing that's not going to work is if I create a class name like this, some-class. Okay? That won't work because we are in JavaScript right now, and JavaScript doesn't like names that have hyphens in them like that. So instead, we'll just use camel case.
Underscores okay?
Yeah, underscores are fine. Same thing, like you could use an underscore in a variable name, right? That wouldn't be a problem at all. Okay, so I want to create a class for the for this div right here that's going to hold all of our boxes. And I want to use flex on that so that I can flex those boxes out across the screen, right? So we'll call this class container. And this container class will say display flex. Okay. And then how do I want to do this? Maybe I'll just I'm going to justify content. I was thinking about doing center, but let's do space between. Or maybe space evenly. Okay. All right, and then we'll have another class for these guys in here, these actual boxes, right? And let me break out these too so it's a little more readable. Oops. Okay, cool. So can I do this? Can I say class equals whatever here? Okay, why is this a problem? Yeah, the problem is that we're in this sort of pseudo JavaScript land where this word class has a specific meaning, right? So we can't use that inside of our JSX. Instead, we're going to have to use class name. But it will accomplish kind of what we expect it to accomplish. So I'll say class name. And then what we're going to do is up here above the component, we'll actually import our styles from this module file right here. Okay? So I'll say import style, oops, not stools, from /boxclicker.module.css. Okay? It is, but notice how where are we actually writing this code? We're already inside that components folder, right? So that // is saying from the current folder that we're already in. Yeah. Okay. So now that I've got a reference to this styles variable, I can actually use it inside my JSX. So down here, okay, I'm going to use what's called a ternary operator to decide, am I going to show a clicked class or an unclicked class, right? Okay. So I'll say value equals 0, question mark. That means it's unclicked, right? So then in that case, I want to do styles.unclicked. Otherwise, what I want to do is styles.clicked. Okay? All right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create this style inside here. So we'll say, I'm actually going to target both of these guys because I want to give them some height and some width and so forth. So we'll say clicked, comma, unclicked. Okay, we'll give them a height of, I don't know, 100 pixels, width, 100 pixels. And what else do we want? We want to probably make them flex so that the text is like right in the center. So I'm going to say display flex. And then we'll do justify content, center. And then align items, which will vertically align them as well. Like that. Okay? Now all I really need to change is just the color. So for clicked, what color do we want for clicked? Wow. All right. You didn't hesitate there. You were like ready to go. All right. Dot unclicked. What do we want for unclicked? Purple. Okay. So let's save that. Let's apply this here, and let's see if we're getting any styling here. Okay. Margin. Oh, so I think what happened here is, what did happen? Did we get our flex as expected? But it looks to me like this property did not. Okay. Yeah. I didn't apply the. I see. I didn't use the container. So let's go back to here and let's say class name is container, right? Styles container. Okay, not bad, right? Cool. And in fact, maybe I'll make the text white so it's a little readable. I don't know. I'll just say color white. All right, now we can see it a little bit better. Cool, so now what I need to do is I need to handle a click on one of these guys, and then I'm going to need to change the state somehow, right? Okay. So how do we add some kind of a handler for these divs? If we were doing vanilla JavaScript, yes. But here we're going to use these synthetic events that we've been talking about, right? And then React is going to add these event listeners on our behalf. So I could say on click, and that's going to be some function, right? Okay, so I'm going to create this little arrow function inside here, and we'll probably create a function called toggle clicked. What do you think I might want to pass into this toggle clicked? I'm hearing a lot of different ideas here. Styles? Someone say pass into styles here? No, our styles are only for creating some kind of a visual appearance, right? So I have my callback function right now, and I'm saying I'm going to invoke this thing called toggle clicked, which I haven't written just yet. But what do you think toggle clicked's going to want to know?
The state is 0.
Probably wants to know what index I clicked on, right? That way I can change the state.
One thing.
Right.
Yeah, I knew about that one.
Looking at us like, nobody knows that.
So that's how we do it, right? I have reference to this I, which is the index that I'm on right now. And let's just pass that into my toggle clicked function. Cool. All right. Now we have to write that function, right? Because it's not there. So let's say function. Actually, why am I saying function? We're inside of a class. So here we're just going to write it like this. Toggle clicked equals a function that takes in an index, right? So I can say index here. Okay, and now inside the body of the function, this is where I'm going to make some changes. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, this is going to be a little bit tricky and a little bit hard to understand at first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clone what my current box's state is. All right. In fact, I'm going to clone my entire state. But we'll see in a minute. So yeah, don't worry about it just yet. But let's just say, I'm going to say const new state equals, and here I can use this little spread operator, right? I can just say this dot state. Okay? And now in the new state, what I want to do is I want to change one specific thing about it, right? What do I want to change? I want to say new state dot boxes at whatever index I'm changing, right? Equals what? So if it was 0, I want to turn it to 1. Otherwise, I want to turn it to back to 0. You know what I kind of changed my mind. What if we turn these to an actual Boolean, like a literal true or false? That might make this a little bit easier, right? So if I change these zeros to false, okay, and then inside here, I was saying value equals 0. So now I could say value equals false. Or if I wanted to get kind of fancy, I could just say not value. I hope that doesn't bother anyone. All right, so if it's false, then unclicked, right? Same thing. Okay, so now what we want to change it to is we want to change it to this dot state dot boxes at that index, but I want to negate it. Okay, so if it were originally false, I want to turn it to true. If it were true, I want to turn it to false. Okay. Am I done yet? Inside this toggle click function?
You put some spaces there, baby.
Yeah, no, right? It looks like I've got more to do. A little bit more to do. We're almost there. So we've got this new state object that we've created. Now we need to essentially apply that new state. Okay? And React gives us a special function to do that, which is called set state. So I can say this dot set state, and then I could pass in my new state. Okay? So to answer your question, Baxter, about why were we cloning the state to begin with, well, React has this concept, and this is shared in functional programming, of immutability. Okay? So the idea is we don't want to mutate or change something that already exists. Instead, what we want to do is create a new version of it that we can then change and mutate. Okay? It makes, in a lot of cases, it makes the code a little bit easier to reason about, because sometimes if we're changing state, it's like, well, what changed that state? I don't even know where that came from or what caused it. Versus if you're just creating a brand new state, you can kind of track state was here, now state was there, and so forth, right? Because you have all these discrete states. They're not overriding one another. Okay, so let's try this. See if things have gone well. Oh, toggle click is not defined. And the reason it's not defined is because I forgot to use the this keyword. Right? This.toggle click. Okay, let's see if we're okay now. Let's try to click on that. Whoa. Excellent. Right? So we're getting what we want. I want to add a, for these guys, I just want to add a cursor pointer so that it looks like they're actually clickable, right? So here, if I hover over them, They look like they're clickable, and I can turn them off again, turn them on, and so forth. Okay. So we're pretty much there. The only other thing that we want to do is maybe we want to have some points in this game, right? We want to sort of track where is the person at. This is a meta question, right? Is this a game? Yes, it is. So let's add something to our original state object. Instead of just having boxes, we want to add points. Okay, and we'll set that at 0 to begin with. Now we want to render that inside our render function here. So let's just say up here I want to have, I don't know, h2. So here we'll just say points, and then I'll use these curly braces to output that, right? This dot state dot points. What if I didn't want to keep saying this dot state all over the place? How could I do that? I could destructure, right? So I could say in here, const, we'll say points, and then we'll say boxes equals this dot state. Okay? So now here I can just say points, same thing in there. Alright, so let's see if that's rendering for us. Oh yeah, I forgot to do something. So here, remember we always have to wrap our JSX in one parent element. I didn't do that. I have two siblings here, but no parent. So let's just wrap it. Okay, I'll say wrap with abbreviation, div. But I like using these fragments because I don't like adding unnecessary divs everywhere. And that will work. Okay, so now we're seeing that we've got 0 points, so that's all good. So how many points do we want to add if they've successfully clicked all the boxes? 1. All right. You're gonna make this game hard. All right, very well. So let's do some stuff to our new state before we set the state, right? Or we'll potentially do something if they've in fact turned all the boxes, right? So how can I check that if all of my boxes are have trues in them? So let's set up a little conditional, right? If. So we've got that part going. And what I'm going to say is if this, or if new state dot boxes, okay, that's that array of values. They either have zeros and ones in them, or trues and falses. Dot every. Okay. So what dot every is running is we want to find out if all these boxes meet some condition. Okay. And I believe I should just be able to pass this. Usually it takes a callback function, but I should be able to just pass Boolean in there to say, like, are they all true? Okay. Hopefully that'll work. If it fails, then we'll rewrite it, but let's try it. Okay. So if they're all true, then what do we want to do? We want to add. So we want to say new state dot points equals this dot state dot points plus 1. Okay. And then the other thing that we want to do is we want to say new state dot boxes, because we're trying to reset essentially, is just going to be an array that has a bunch of falses in it, right? Okay, so let's see if our game works. So we're at 0, right? Cool. It worked, right? So I can start anywhere. I can go here, 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 and we're adding our points. And it's resetting every time.
How come the argument just has to be equal and not true?
Because what Boolean is saying is it's saying only, well, the reason why we're not just using true is because there are also other true and falsy values. So like something that was undefined, for instance, would be discarded, and every would return false. Now, I don't want you guys to worry too much about every, because it's not something that you're going to be tested on or anything. It's just, I did kind of want to show you that's how we can check to make sure that every item in an array meets some specific condition.
So how come you don't get the +1 point if every boolean is true? If all three of them are false, or all three of them are true, you're gonna get the points.
No. No, we're only getting the point if all three of them are true. Because look, if I reset this game, so in other words, I just refresh the page, right? They're all false right now. I don't have any points. Yeah?
I still don't get why that.
Yeah, I want to understand like the syntactical reasoning why that's happening.
It's just the way the argument list is written.
Okay, all right. Let's change this and actually use a callback, because I could see that's a little bit of an issue. Okay, so let's create a callback function, right? That takes we'll just say it takes in a value, and then it returns whether or not val equals true. Okay? Does that kind of make sense? So I'm just saying this will return true as long as the value that I received was true. That's fine. That's all good. But it still should work the exact same way. Okay? Same thing. So every time I've got all three of them clicked, I get a point. Okay. One last thing I wanted to show you guys too. When we're talking about class components in React, there are these other things called lifecycle methods, which are certain things that run at a point in a component's life. Okay, so if I wanted to do something, for instance, when this component first gets connected to my DOM, I can have something in this lifecycle method called component did mount. Okay, and inside this function, I can just say console log something. I can just tell ourselves, hey, this component was now attached to the DOM. Okay, so we'll say console.log component is attached. Okay, and I'll save that, and let's open up our console here. I'll refresh it so that you guys can see when the component is attached runs. Pretty fast, right? It attached itself like almost immediately, so we didn't notice much lag there. But that's how I could accomplish, let's say that I was rendering a component on my page and I wanted to go and grab some data for it, right? That would be the appropriate place to do it. It would be inside this component did mount lifecycle event. So once the component is mounted, let's go get the data for it, bring the data back, and put that into the state, essentially, right? All right. So we have a lot of code here. I don't think I want to go through the entire thing, but are there specific spots that seem troublesome for you guys? Is it mostly this toggle clicked? Because we can spend the bulk of our time here if that's the part that... Is there anything else that was...
That's what I said.
How about the JSX? Was that troublesome?
Is the key, is that different from like the HTML ID?
Yeah, not the same thing. Yeah, our key is just being used to satisfy React. React just wants to have a unique value for each thing inside of our map. Let's talk about this real quick, because I think that could be a cause for concern. Let's just talk about our JSX for a second. Aya, can you read through, say, 45 through 47?
45 included the parent,
Yeah, it's basically a little fragment, an opening fragment tag. Okay.
and then for 46 you the points value.
Yeah.
And then created a div, and then you attached a class to it.
Good.
It's container from the styles file.
Yeah, and let's take a quick look at what that style looks like. So if I do my inspect over here, let's see what we see inside this app. And here we go. I've got this box clicker container style. See how it's got a unique hash at the end there? That's how it keeps from interacting with other styles for other components. So that's what's creating that style isolation for us. Okay? That's what makes CSS modules really nice, is that isolation. Cool. All right. And then so from 48 to 56, Hutan, can you see this back there? Yeah, I'll close out the sidebar and make it a little bigger. And what's that doing for us when we call map? It's important that you know. Anyone want to help Hutan? It's allowing us to iterate through everything inside of our array. Right? What are we passing to map here? No. No, what are we passing to? So inside the parentheses here, what did we pass to map? No. It's a function, right? This arrow thing here is indicating that we're passing in a function. So we're passing in an entire function definition. Okay? Now, as you mentioned, that function is going to take in a value, and our I is representing what? The index. Good. Cool. And then what are we returning? Well, it's returning everything inside these parentheses, right? So we've got a div, we've got this key. What was the point of the key again? Satisfy React, right? Okay. And then our class name, what's going on in here? This could be confusing. Who wants to read this ternary? Bob.
So the values, there is no value.
So we're essentially negating the value, right? And we're asking what is the result of that. So if the value is already false, what would negating it turn it to?
True.
True. So if it was false, we would say that turns to true, which means that we would get this first thing, right?
Right.
It's unclicked. Okay.
Would that be the same? You said that's the same thing as writing value double equals false. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly the same as us saying value triple equals false, right? Well, not 0 in this case because I changed it to a Boolean. Yeah, originally it was 0s and 1s, but yeah. Okay. All right, and then what? Is that Jessica's dog? Oh, it's roaming free. Look out. Hide your food. All right, so we've got this on click here, and what's that doing for us? Nick, what's happening there?
It's taking a callback.
Good.
Callback is toggle clicked
Yeah.
function.
Right.
It's taking in an index.
Right, so our callback that we've written here, it's like an inline callback, right? It's going to invoke the this.toggleClicked function, and we're going to pass in that index so that when we run the toggleClicked function, we know which index did we click on. Because we do need to have that information, right? Yes?
I have a question. Do you have to have the arrow function? Like, can we just call the this.toggleClicked function directly without calling it inside another function?
A great question. What would happen if I did that? What would this.toggleClicked receive? It looks like it's receiving nothing here, but what are we actually getting? event. Would the event have the index for me? No, it wouldn't, right? So that wouldn't work. It would be like I'm trying to call toggle click with an event, but remember, event is an object. It's not an actual index, which is what I need. Yeah. Good question. Cool. Who wants to take us through this this toggle clicked function? Who's an adventurous soul? You want to start us out, Gio? He scoffs. Is that what it's equal to? Uh-oh, we've got some syntactical stuff happening, right? There's an arrow again. What does that mean? It's actually a function, right? I'm setting toggle clicked equal to a function. Make sense? That function itself will take in the index, and then what are we going to do inside here? Good. Okay. So ultimately, we're basically just cloning everything that's inside this state, right? Okay. All right. Next, who wants to read 23? Francis?
Take that new state,
Uh-huh.
and I guess we get the boxes from the start state and the index of that. And if it's, does that mean it's not equal, or is that like a?
This is an assignment still, right? Every
Yeah,
time I
it's
just say
equal.
equals, it means
Yeah.
I'm assigning it some value.
Oh, okay. So if it's basically equal to, what about the exclamation point? What is that?
That is negating whatever the current value is. So if
Oh,
it's
okay,
currently
so if it's-
false, it's going to assign a true to this, right?
Okay, yeah.
And vice versa.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions about that? Negating? Again, this isn't critical that you guys get this. I just want to show you that it's possible. If we have sort of like a flip-flop situation, you can easily change a true to false by just putting that exclamation point in front of it, right?
Yeah, it's a bit tricky.
Yeah,
Sorry.
a little tricky to read. All right, and then what do we do on 25 through 32? Greg.
Creating a box of
On 25?
yeah.
No, I'm not really creating anything, right? If means what? No, this is super important. So it's been said before that programming is nothing but if statements and for loops. Right? So what are we doing here, Greg? It's just a conditional.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, I'm just checking to see if this condition is true, right? So specifically, what was I trying to find out there on that line?
If the box are true or
Yes, if every single one of them had a true value. That means that, okay, I've clicked on all three, now I can go ahead and add a point, right? All right? And then inside of there, what were we doing?
the new state dot point is equal. So if all the boxes are true, add one.
Mhm.
Like plus.
So we're just going to add 1 to the existing number of points.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And then next?
Box is like all the boxes are false.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning.
So let's set them all back to false. It's like us doing a reset.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. Any final questions before I close it off? I'll share the code with you guys. Okay. All right. Let me stop this.